I first realized something was terribly wrong when I heard Max, my YC dog, let out a piercing yelp, the kind that sends a shiver down your spine and knots your stomach. I spun around to see a woman, her nails clawing into Max's harness, jerking him backward like he was a toy to be tossed aside. She wore a pressed blouse, her hair sculpted into a rigid bob, and gripped a clipboard stamped with the Crestwood Pines Homeowners Association seal. Her name wasn't yet known to me, but her glare radiated hostility. I rushed forward, prying her hand off Max's harness while struggling to keep my voice even. All I knew was she'd laid hands on my YC dog, and nothing could have prepared her for what would follow. My name is Nathan Brooks, a Marine Corps veteran who served 2 tours overseas before a medical discharge due to injuries and persistent PTSD. Max isn't just a doze, my lifeline, the reason I navigate most days without crumbling under panic attacks or flashbacks. A well-trained German shepherd with deep, attentive eyes, he's always tuned to my breathing, ready to nudge me back to calm if I start spiraling. When I moved to Crestwood Pines, a picturesque neighborhood of tidy lawns and shaded streets, I thought it'd be the ideal place to rebuild my life. I had no clue that behind the charming facades and polite waves lurked a web of rigid rules. The HOA here was notorious for enforcing its bylaws with zeal, and at its helm was a woman named Linda Grayson, the one who'd grabbed Max that day. I later learned Linda had been HOA president for nearly a decade, obsessed with maintaining order in Crestwood Pines. She issued fines for minor infractions on mailbox colors, unapproved flowers in your yard. I'd received a few letters after MOVYing in, gentle reminders about trash schedules or warnings against VYing tools outside. They seemed routine. A neighbor, Tom, mentioned the HOA could be intense but said compliance kept them off your back. No one warned me about their stance on YC dogs or Linda's particular disdain for large animals. Max and I were walking home from our morning stroll when the confrontation happened, near the community garden, a small park with a gazebo where I'd stopped to check my phone. Max, on a short leash, was sniffing the grass, perfectly behaved. Out of nowhere, Linda appeared, clipboard in hand, accusing me of violating some vague dog rule. I explained that Max was a registered YC dog, that I had every legal right to walk him in public, and that the Americans with Disabilities Act protected us. She wasn't interested. She insisted Crestwood Pines had strict dog policies, that large animals were confined to specific areas, and that the HOA had final authority. I stayed calm, noting YC animals are exempt from pet restrictions. Before I could finish, she stepped forward, grabbed Max's harness and yanked, nearly toppling him. It took every bit of restraint not to snap. I carefully removed her hand, furious but mindful of Max's training, steady, patient, protective only when needed. Linda sneered, muttering about fake YC dogs used to dodge HOA rules. My pulse raced, but I held it together, saying only, "You just assaulted a YC animal." She rolled her eyes, promised I'd hear from the HOA, and strutted off, heels clicking, clipboard clutched like armor. Shaken, I got Max home, my mind racing. If she was bold enough to grab him in daylight, what else might she do? That night, I emailed the HOA board, detailing the incident and attaching Max's YC dog certification, plus references to federal laws protecting disabled individuals and their YC animals. I cited the Fair Housing Act, making it clear HOAs can't override disability accommodations. I hoped for an apology or an investigation into Linda. Instead, I got silence, eerie and unsettling. Over the next few days, notices began piling up in my mailbox, all on HOA letterhead. They accused me of keeping a dangerous animal and an unregistered pet, citing bylaws that didn't apply to YC dogs. The tone was menacing, hinting at fines if I didn't comply. I responded to each, reiterating that Max was a protected YC animal. The notices only grew harsher. An email from the HOA treasurer, Greg Hammond, warned that daily fines could be imposed until I removed Max. The hostility was clear. They either didn't know the law or were banking on bullying me into submission. They didn't realize my military background had taught me to stand firm. I started logging every interaction, letters, emails, encounters. Max, sensing my stress, stayed close, resting his head on my knee as I sifted through the growing paperwork. One afternoon, I dug into the HOA's covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Amid the pet rules, a clause deferred to federal and state laws on YC animals, clear proof they had no ground to stand on. Yet they ignored it. Then Linda showed up at my door. It was a quiet Sunday, and I'd just finished tidying when I heard a sharp knock. Through the window, I saw her with another board member, a lanky guy fidgeting with his phone. I opened the door, keeping Max close. Linda launched into a speech about large dogs being a safety hazard, claiming neighbors had complained. I asked who and for proof Max had done anything wrong. She dodged, instead threatening Dula 100 daily fines if I didn't remove him. My patience snapped. He's a SERVYC dog and you're breaking the law by harassing me, I said. She tried to argue, but I shut the door mid-sentence. That marked the start of an all-out battle. 2 days later, a notice arrived, fining me Dula 500 for repeated violations, even labeling Max a dangerous dog. The absurdity almost made me laugh. Max aggressive? But my anger surged when they mentioned failing to register a large pet, willfully ignoring his SERVYC status. The letter warned of legal action if I didn't pay within a week. How had I gone from hopeful homeowner to HOA target so fast? I contacted a local disability rights group, who were outraged and connected me with an attorney, Emily Carter, a disability law expert. When I showed her my stack of documents, emails, notices, notes on Linda's aggression, she was stunned. She explained that under the Fair Housing Act and ADA, SERVYC animals aren't subject to pet restrictions, including size or breed limits. With YANKED of harassment and a physical incident, we had a solid case. Emily sent a cease and desist letter to the HOA, demanding they drop the fines and respect my rights. Their response a week later was defiant. The HOA's lawyer claimed authority to regulate all pets for community safety, alleging Max caused fear among residents without proof. Emily called it a flimsy argument. We filed a complaint with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, alleging Fair Housing Act violations. That's when things escalated further. Linda posted dangerous dog flyers around the neighborhood, clearly targeting Max. Some neighbors avoided me, likely belying the lies. Others quietly supported me, noting Linda's late-night prowling or her boasts about driving that dog out. I stayed vigilant, wearing a body camera on walks. One morning I caught Linda trailing us, snapping photos with her phone. Creepy, but useful YANKED. The HUD complaint, naming Linda and the HOA for harassment and discrimination, rattled the board. A sympathetic member, Claire, admitted Linda had bullied dissenters for years, and the board had enabled her by ignoring the law. She apologized for staying silent, calling Linda the ringleader. HUD sent an investigator, D. Wells, to interview us. I met him at my house, showing Max in his calm environment and sharing footage of Linda's behavior, plus every threatening letter. D listened carefully, taking notes. The next day he met with Linda and the board. I didn't hear details, but neighbors said Linda stormed out, ranting about federal overreach. She then publicly called me a liar, claiming Max was a regular pet I'd passed off as a SERVYC dog rule and baseless. Weeks dragged on, with fines topping Dula 1,500. I refused to pay per Emily's advice. Then a certified letter from HUD arrived, finding the HOA had violated my rights by refusing to accommodate Max and harassing me. They faced penalties, and the case could escalate to the Department of Justice if unresolved. It was a violatory but not final. Linda doubled down, writing an HOA newsletter piece slamming fake SERVYC animals. But cracks appear. Board members distanced themselves, and Claire said a recall vote was brewing to oust Linda. The community was waking up to the cost of her vendetta. One evening, Emily called with HUD's final ruling. The HOA and Linda violated federal law, incurring a Dula 10,000 fine, ideally paid by Linda for her role. All fines against me were voided, and Max's dangerous label was erased. It was a win not just for me but for SERVYC dog handlers everywhere. The neighborhood buzzed. At a packed HOA meeting in the local school gym, Claire announced Linda's removal for misconduct, citing the HUD fine and her attack on Max. Linda tried to play victim, blaming a federal witch hunt. I stood, Max by my side, and said, "This is the dog you call dangerous. He's never hurt anyone. You grabbed him. You harassed us. Now you face the consequences." The crowd erupted, some cheering as Linda stormed out. The HOA used reserve funds to pay the fine, then pursued Linda to recover it. She refused, claiming unfair targeting, but her influence was gone. Neighbors threw a block party, inviting Max and me as guests of honor. The new president, Alan, a retired teacher, apologized and vowed to protect their VYC dog owners. The HOA updated its rules to align with disability laws and held forums to rebuild trust. HUD's ruling echoed beyond Crestwood Pines. A newspaper ran my stories of VYC dog harassment leads to do la 10 KHO fine, inspiring other handlers to fight back. Reflecting, I see how close I came to folding without knowledge of my rights or Emily's help. Max was non-negotiable, me protector, my friend. The do la 10,000 fine proved no one's above the law, not even an HOA tyrant. Life settled. Max and I walk freely now, greeted by neighbors and kids. The bulletin board, once plastered with Linda's flyers, now advertises bake sales. Karen faded away, selling her house quietly. The community healed, focusing on gardens and charity drives. I spoke at an HOA meeting explaining their VYC dogs and received a certificate for fostering inclusive VY. That moment, with Max beside me, felt like closure. Linda's grab at Max's harness sparked a fire she couldn't control. Her downfall showed that pride and power don't trump federal law. Max and I found peace, and Crestwood Pines is better for it, a testament to standing firm, documenting every step, and trusting the law to prevail.